violated the rule. But usually when you've got a bad position, that water remains untouched. And what a win by Wesley. But yeah, not the best game for Duda.
As I see Smarter Chess making his way, very proud of his prediction, in the chat saying Wesley in 3+1. And that's all you need to say. Wesley is untouchable, it feels like, in that time patrol, even against Magnus Carlsen. So yeah, Duda, he's in trouble.
Yeah, it's just the right balance that Wesley's able to find, right, between intuition and calculation. He's got that style where he does a little bit of both, and both of those skills for him are so well developed. Duda's got to put the brakes on this and maybe just draw a game with black, hit a free throw, stabilize, and then it's only 2 points, but he doesn't want to let the spiral out of control.
Yeah, you and your sports references today, I forgot about
Klay Thompson's MRI just came back, and I'm pretty devastated.
Yeah. You know,
season end. Can you believe this? Anyways,
I actually can believe it. I'm not happy about it, but
it's terrible, terrible. He's my favorite player. Well, behind Steph Curry, but devastating.
So in other words, you lied. He's not your favorite player.
No, they're sharing first place basically.
And I'm guessing James Wiseman is also your favorite player now that the Warriors. Okay, we'll talk about this later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later.
The knight on e5, good piece. The pawn on d5, not so good pawn. So these type of positions, isolated pawn, we've talked about those earlier, where you want to blockade the pawn, make sure it can't push and trade off, and go after it later in the game. So Wesley has a calm approach. He's saying, I can put my queen on d4 and just say that pawn d5 is stuck in his tracks.
Yeah, even d4 might be something to consider for Duda. Sacking. We saw Wesley do something remotely similar in a previous game, sacking the pawn to open some air up. I don't think the occasion calls for that, but I would consider a way to maybe go queen d6, something where you eventually want to absolve yourself of this weakness. The good thing about queen d6 is also that black eyes the h2 square. He'd have some knight g4 ideas. I'm not saying there's any chance that black delivers mate here. Duda's definitely worse here, but I think he can hold this together. He goes queen f6. Okay.
I want to show something very quickly, and I think it's important. And so we'll bring up the analysis board just to call attention to it. Your idea with queen d6 and knight g4 is really nice. And the one thing I was going to say is that a really cool thing for white is you can play with like queen c7. So just because mate is under attack doesn't mean you need to block the attacking piece or defend it more directly.
Oh, that's a
the
beautiful
queen
idea.
Protects h2 through the enemy queen, offering the trade, taking over the c file, hitting the queenside pawn. So I just want to show that little trick very quickly.
I love the X-ray ideas.
You know, I'm just trying to be an accommodating co-commentator. So I'm here for you, buddy.
Mostly you're succeeding, but we'll talk about that afterwards. we have some stuff to renegotiate. Well, the state of affairs in Denmark or in Duda's position are not great. He's a minute down on the clock again. That narrative
where's Denmark come from?
It's reference. It's Shakespeare reference, right?
Oh, okay, got it. You know, I'm not really well versed on my Shakespeare at the moment, but
no, I've never. Trust me, I've only read Spark Notes. But what's the? Isn't it rotten in the state of Denmark? I think.
Yeah, we can talk about Hamlet and things a little bit later.
No, I think we should talk about Hamlet now. All right, so let's just be clear.
Blockade. The queen on d4. Very happy. You can replace that with a knight.
Knight f3. Yeah.
And I'm getting to the end game where the knight is very strong. The bishop on e6 is stuck protecting the d5 pawn, so not a very good piece, whereas white's pieces have a free range.
Oh,
here's the rook on c7.
Rook b8 might be a sad necessity. It is. Now the knight's going to come to b3 or f3, most likely.
Probably, I kind of like b3 more because you have more squares to go to, even a5, but he plays bishop b5, not allowing the knight to go to e8 to kick the rook.
I would seriously consider d4 and knight d5. Just saying, all right, I don't care. I'm just going to get some activity for my pieces, and I'm going to get that rook out of c7. I would play d4 here if I were Duda.
How about a6?
Maybe Wesley goes e4.
Not even take it, just push through. He plays a6. All right.
Maybe d4 now.
You can also.
I don't know why.
No, rook c8. Can you get rook c8 in here?
You can try. Ooh, and rook b7. He does it. Rook f1, and then d4. Finally.
And then it happens tactically, and white's in big trouble.
Exactly. So rook c8 is forced. Now white preserves an advantage, but that is a huge win for black to trade rooks. This should be a draw now.
Right. King comes to d6, but white is still better because the pawn isolated, you need to defend it. And we actually saw an endgame like this. Who was the match? It was Duda against Fabiano, where it was light square bishop, bad one versus good one, and the bishop came to b3 and put pressure on the pawn, and eventually e4 was played. I think that was the Duda-Fabi match. And that, as I'm thinking about it, you don't want to eliminate in our minds the chances that white has here, because he is certainly better.
Yeah, without a doubt. And 26 seconds, he's still a minute up on the clock. You don't want to fall asleep here if you're white. There's, you can let things out of control. F5 is an interesting resource by Duda, trying to trade some pawns, get that king out of d4. Even h5, the more pawns he trades, and he goes g5, he fixes the pawn on g4. I think he's going to play one of these moves, f5 at some point, maybe knight g6 also. For now, he brings his pieces into the game. An idea for Wesley to play f4, potentially. So it's hard to generate chances here for white, Robert. I'm beginning to think this is just a draw.
Yeah, f4 does invite f5. And
yeah, exactly.
You have to be careful. If you push too far, it can backfire.
Yep.
And this knight would like to kick the king out, but I do not want to give up the knight for bishop. That's a really important point. The bishop on e6 is quite useless, and then white would take over all the dark squares. So knight c6 check would be a very poor decision.
In e4, I thought about that, but f6 stopping e5 check, and maybe b5. No.
Could black?
Wesley's got to be careful here. I know that sounds crazy, but he really does.
I was asking you the same thing. Like, can black be better? The f4 square is black's for the taking.
Again. Okay, he does go b5. I thought bishop d7, but then b takes a6. No, bishop a4.
Oh.
Bishop d7 here is very nasty. Okay, he doesn't do it, but
I guess there's e takes d5. That's why.
Yeah.
You want to keep this pawn as well
right.
defend as possible. But no, you're coming up with clever shots there. And by the way, Duda down to 9.4 seconds. He is holding very well. He should not be in any big trouble. But when you don't have time and maybe one tricky situation arises, he will not have.
At f4, though. Has
He's
it
doing
the
well.
tricky situation arisen on the other side? Okay, Wesley trying to distract his attention, maybe move the bishop away to b7 or something, c6.
Yeah, he was bishop c6, and that's Wesley's offering a trade of bishops. Is knight f4 possible?
Oh, he goes for it. Knight c4, knight e3. Ugh.
The f3 is hanging, so you have to...
Knight e4 check is interesting, trying to inch the king closer.
Knight f4, go. So
what now? He's gonna move.
Wesley is kind of playing for a win, but he's playing with fire. He can be worse. Knight e6 check, knight e6 check, and then king comes in. Black's king
is hanging also. That needs to be factored in.
On h5, trying to give this pawn to h4. Wow, splitting the pawn.
Takes it. Now he's got weaknesses all over the place.
Knight back to f4, bishop f5. That's what he wants to accomplish, is have a more active piece. But look at this. There's a problem on the other side of the board, Danya.
Uh-oh.
b5.
What's going on? He takes it. Bishop f3. He's got a chance now. h4. Wesley trying to remove the pieces from the board. He's going to succeed. He's going to move.
If he took the pawn, it was king e3, forking the two pieces. So black can never lose this game, but does he have any winning chances? No, not really.
Yeah.
Take it. Take this pawn.
Wow. That was more interesting.